Chip Davis is with us live, I think, from Grenada. Good morning, Chip. How are you, sir? It's good to have you. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Mr. Paul. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Man, it is a pleasure. I can hear you loud and clear, and I probably, if I listen, I can hear some birds in the background. I think I do. I do. Don't shoot them right now. Not a turkey, but some birds. Chip, thank you for joining us. I mean, you made news the other day. It took 30 years to get this done. I'll be honest with you. I've never been a turkey hunter. Rabbits, deer, for the most part. Never turkey. We didn't have a lot around the Shaw area because we cleared most of the woods for cotton. So you did a tremendous feat here. Let's start it off by saying what it was, how you did it, and let's just take it from there. But first of all, the Grand Slam.
Well, what I just completed 3 weeks ago this past Tuesday was what we refer to as a Super Slam, which is harvested in each of the 49 states in the United States that have turkeys. Now, Alaska does not have any due to the climate there. That's just not, temperatures are not conducive to.
They have some frozen turkeys, but those are a different kind.
Absolutely. They also have some politicians up there, and that's a different kind of turkey as well. So
yeah, that's true. But so we're not talking about Grand Slam. The Grand Slam is where you get all three different varieties for the most part.
That's correct. Yes, there are four different subspecies in the United States, and they are the eastern, which we have here, the Osceola, which lives on the panhandle of Florida, the lower peninsula of Florida. Rio Grandes are typically, people think of them as Texas, but they're also different places in the country as well, more arid kind of desert type turkeys. And then finally the Merriams, which are more mountainous type turkeys. Think Rocky Mountains, high elevation. Yeah. Those are the four subspecies in the United States. And then there's the Goulds down in Yucatan, well, not Yucatan, in the Sierra Madres in Mexico. Yeah. And finally, the fifth species we don't have here, and he does not look like a turkey. They call him the ocellated. He is down the Yucatan in southern Mexico. So those are the five subspecies, and so that's kind of how they define it. But the Super Slam consists of harvesting a turkey in all 49 states, and it takes a minute to get that done.
Yes, it did. 30 years. At what point, how young were you? At what point did you say, this is something I want to do? And understanding this, just not only the cost, but the cost of time to get it done.
I started in 1992, and when my first out-of-state trip, this was never in the cards at all, never even a dream. Mm-hmm. But I went to Missouri in 92 and was able to harvest a turkey there. My focus then shifted toward the Grand Slam, which we just spoke of, the four subspecies in the United States, and was able to knock that out. And I enjoyed the travel, and I enjoyed chasing the turkeys so much. I said, the next goal would be shoot them all. Go to every state. And it's been a lot of fun. It's taken a lot of time, but this is a little bit interesting. I finished up exactly to the day 30 years from my first out of state turkey. So it literally took 30 years to do. Yeah.
How many of those have you mounted?
I have a full Grand Slam right in there. You can't see in there, but mounted, and I have two or three others additional off in different places. So it's obviously you can't mount them all, but
does Hawaii have turkey? Hawaii has turkeys. There's 49 states.
Absolutely.
Somebody on C Spire text line we're asking that.
But yes, absolutely. Hawaii does. I was in Hawaii this spring, matter of fact.
In reading the story here, you just didn't go by this helter-skelter. I mean, you studied it out. You picked the best states, the best times, the best locations for that. How did you do that? How did you actually make a science of this and maximize your chances?
Well, I think like a lot of things in life, repetition and experience are great teachers. And after the first few years in the first few states, and you started putting some patterns together, and you kind of learn how to compile that research, and that process became easier. And that's I've done a few of these interviews, and my goal is not, hey, Chip is some super turkey hunter at all, because I'm not. My goal is, this is just an adventure. This happened to be my adventure, and this happened to be revolved around the wild turkey. But there's a lot of people they have adventures, but they're afraid to take the first step. They're afraid to step out there because I think a lot of times the number one fear is failure. But you know what? I went to 5 different states that I did not harvest a turkey, and I had to repeat. And I went back to them, and finally, some of them went back to a couple of times and finally harvested turkey. But mine's just turkeys. But other people with their adventure, my message is this. Get off the couch and go chase your adventure. There's so much that you can learn from this process. There's so many people you'll meet, so many places that you'll absolutely be able to see. And it does not have to be turkeys. It can be these same principles apply to business. These same principles apply to raising a family. True. The same principles apply to life.
I agree with you 100%. And it's good that I'm glad you're sharing it, because there are a lot of people who are avid turkey hunters. As a matter of fact, if I look to where I'm tracking my grandson right now, he and his college buddies are in Kansas, leaving Mississippi State and went to Kansas to turkey hunt there. That's his first trip there. So I mean, I'll send him this, but he's got a long way to go. But he was looking forward to that for a long time. And I'm always glad to see young people get involved in that as far as the outdoors is concerned. So you got a great story to tell. The factor also is that you'd have to buy a hunting license and prepare for that in every state in the union.
Absolutely. Yep, that's a big time part of it for sure. And they're not cheap. I will just average. They're different places, but average probably $130 to $140 average. I've paid more than that. I've paid less than that, but that's the average across the country probably for non-residents.
Yeah, so. You can't turn the clock back, but boy, this would have made a fantastic hunting show on any of the many channels that do hunting and fishing now. It's a shame that you can't do by that. One of the questions on C Spire text line is, what was the hardest state ever of all that to kill a turkey?
I'm still going to say this. The most difficult turkeys that I've ever found is public land Mississippi turkeys, hands down. If you can consistently harvest gobblers on public land in the state of Mississippi, you can harvest them anywhere that God makes them.
Because they're smarter or less turkeys?
I honestly think it's an education thing. I think there's so many rednecks kind of like me that are out there chasing them, and I just think that they get really, really wise. And now I will say our department, Mississippi Wildlife Fisheries and Parks, do a great job at the WMAs and the different public lands that we have, but there's just a lot of pressure typically. And other places in the country, turkeys are just not as big of a thing as they are down south, especially when I'm referring to is maybe northeastern states, very far north states. Those turkeys are not as pressured. People just don't chase them as much. But down here they do, and if you can consistently get to them here, you can get them anywhere.
You mentioned in the article some of the things that you were taught and you had to relearn when you actually were in the field as far, because the turkey, as Benjamin Franklin said, is one of the wariest of all. And so what did you learn? What as you hunt after hunt, you gained experience in some things that were probably taught to you the wrong way?
I would say probably the most valuable lessons that I learned on this whole 30-year quest had very little to do with the wild turkey. It had a lot more to do about me as a person and living life and experiencing the world. I absolutely could talk for days about the turkey things, but the bigger thing that I learned was how to travel, what to see, how to prioritize your time, how to plan,
how to prepare,
how to network. Yeah. Absolutely, exactly.
When we come back, Mike in Gulfport has a question. Can you ask him how unusual the 6-beer turkey? I saw a guy recently shot is. We'll talk about that when we come back. Thanks to Chip Davis for spending some time with us. We'll get back to that. Took him 30 years, but he got it done. Grand Slam, of course, but the Super Slam took 30 years. How long did the Grand Slam take you?
Grand Slam was probably over the course of a couple of 2 or 3 years, the first one.
Very good, yeah. Back with more coming up. Mike also has a question in Virginia bird. Okay, it was a Virginia bird. We'll talk about that when we come back. And And we are back live in the Trustmark studios with Chip Davis, and we were talking about the bird from Virginia. I don't know if you've heard about that six-beard. It is, I would imagine that is unusual.
Yeah, that is rare for sure. A beard on a turkey is just a modified feather, and actually, quick, totally unrelated note. Awesome bumper music there, Paul. Both segments.
Thank
awesome
you.
Bumper music. I would throw that in there. So a beard is just a modified feather, and it is not unusual, somewhat uncommon, but not unusual to have multiple beards on turkey. More common, you see double or sometimes triple, but very, very rare to have six, and I think there have been recorded even many more than that. I want to say I'd seen 14 or 15 at amount at some place and some time that I've seen before. But yeah, it is rare, but it's not at all out of the realm of possibility.
Never did you ever see in albino?
I actually, so not albino. We have what we call a smoke gray phase, and I have harvested one smoke gray gobbler in Texas before. That was really a surprise. But at any rate, that's the only one I harvested. And I've seen a couple of more smoke gray. We also have one other color phase called a bronze, is what most people call them, and those are the three. They're just a melanistic pattern or genetic mutation, I guess.
Like any other bird.
Those, absolutely. Those are just anomalies. So they happen sometimes.
Somebody sent me my wife did send me a picture of a yellow cardinal yesterday, and every once in a while somebody will spot one of those, a yellow cardinal. So it's just that quirk. Chip Davis, Chip is from Grenada and a hunter and longtime outdoorsman. I do want to ask you that did you perfect, because you've been doing this since you said 1992, did you perfect the other part of that, which is a very big part, is to being able to call a turkey, and how much does that play into it?
So calling is integral to turkey hunting for sure. And
much like duck
having
hunting,
said,
of course.
Absolutely. And with both duck hunting and turkey hunting, calling is overrated. I absolutely will say that. Calling is much more about rhythm and about language. It's really and truly more about communicating with the turkeys. The same with ducks. Calling is about communication. You do not have to be a championship caller. I've called competitively before in the past, and that was not my cup of tea, but you do not have to be a competitive caller to be successful in the turkey woods, for sure. It's more, calling is strictly communication, no different than you and I are communicating right now. We just happen to be communicating through voice instead of through calls, but this is a turkey's language, and that's literally what we do is via calling is communicate with the birds.
Is it different in each state? I mean, or the different types of turkeys? Or
it didn't used to be.
Do they have their own accents?
Well, that's what I tell people. When you go to Texas, you have to learn how to call in Spanish. So it's and the same is true with Mexico. So no, the rhythm is the same. The sometimes the vocalizations can be slightly different, but it's still the same calls, the same vocalizations.
Well, how do you prepare for that? Is there some way to prepare for that before you go?
I don't know that there is. I mean, basic turkey language is basic turkey language anywhere on the planet, for sure. Yeah. And when I say this slightly different, it's just a matter of where they are in their life cycles at the time. That's the difference. Because they do have different vocalizations at different times of the year. That's right.
Chip Davis is my guest. Chip, when you start looking at the different places that you've gone, and I think you alluded to this earlier, man, the people you've met, the experiences that you carry on from here.
Oh yeah, there are tons of them. I've kind of dissected, as I reflected on recently on the last 30 years and finally wrapping this thing up, I've literally dissected it into three parts. It's the people, and that's probably the most important standout to me, the people I've met along the way. that goes right hand in hand with the life lessons I've learned along the way. The next thing is the places that I've seen. I would have never been able to see a lot of my fondest memories had I not been on this quest. And finally, the turkeys that I've learned from. The turkeys have been my mentors. I have been humbled by wild turkey gobblers, I promise you. But those, I've kind of dissected it that way in those three major categories. And I've learned something from every single state. And I literally had an opportunity. I finished up in West Virginia 3 weeks ago this past Tuesday. And it was the second day that they were open. Monday was their opening day, and it rained and snowed and sleeted all day long. I'm typically on my feet, kind of turkey hunter, move, go, sit down by a tree, that sort of thing, mobile. But because of the inclement weather, and it was nasty, I mean, terribly nasty, I was locked down in a ground blind where at least I could stay dry and I had a heater. So what I did do, though, I had a chance to, while the action was a little slow, I pulled up a alphabetical list of states, and I literally recanted my turkey from every single state that I harvested turkeys in, all but Alaska. And I thought about the people, and I thought about the places and the sites I saw, and I thought about those turkeys. It's amazing that I could even remember them all. I didn't know if I could or not, but those are just really cool things that happen with something like this, and it's pretty cool to look back and reflect and learn from those memories.
And people don't understand that who don't do the outdoors, but in the many years that I've deer hunted and fished in so many lakes across America, there are times when you catch that big one or something happen. And the photos in your mind are so clear that you don't need them on social media or Instagram, anywhere else. You recall those photos, and they are crystal clear, and they never leave you. They're always there in your brain.
You're absolutely right. And so you made the mention of, it does not have to be outdoor related. I mean, this is life, and this is real, and this is special, but these same type of memories. And I just think we overlook this in everyday life so much. And it's a little bit of a shame that America does this. And I think that especially as generations progress, we just lose sight of the fact of setting goals and working really hard to achieve those goals. But having said that, it's when you have the opportunity to look back, because the principles of what I've done on this quest are really life principles, and the reward for that is being able to look back and have that photo in your mind 30, 40, 70 years later, to be able to recall the good parts, recall when you held your child for the first time, recall your wedding, whatever it is, but that's life. And those lessons and those big things are no different than what I just completed with the turkeys.
Did you normally go alone for the most part, or did you take somebody with you on some trips?
I'm going to say 90+% I did alone. But I spent most of my adult life farming. I'm an auctioneer now. And I could not leave. I couldn't plan a long time ahead. I could plan where I was going in the state, especially when I was hunting all that public land in the early days, but I couldn't make airline reservations. We'd have to have 2 inches of rain in the gaze because I couldn't leave the field if we were planting. So that's where I started going alone. And then later on, I learned if you're by yourself, it's much easier to gain permission if you have to knock on a door and ask for permission to access. It's a lot easier if you're by yourself than it is with your vehicle with 5 buddies.
Tim in Tupelo wants me to ask you, did you take any with a bow and arrow?
I did. I've harvested several turkeys with a bow and arrow in several different states, but I actually have a friend of mine that's on the same quest to do them all with a bow. A gentleman by the name of Steve Brown from Starkville, really, really great, superior turkey hunter, one of the best in the world, I would say. But he's on the quest to do them all with a bow. I've done several with a bow, but nowhere close to all.
You know how many people have done this feat and have accomplished? Is that written anywhere on how many people have done the Super Slam?
It is. So there are probably a few more people that have done it than is recorded. National Wild Turkey Federation Records Program, which you can Google, keeps up with that. And to date, there are 13 recorded Super Slams. I just sent my paperwork in literally yesterday. I dropped it off at the post office, and I will be the 14th. But I'm sure there's probably more people that did not register them. So, but on record, as far as the place that registered them, I'm number 14. So.
What do you do on the auctioneer? What do you auction off?
I primarily deal in farm equipment, and I primarily broker. Yep. So we call it farmers.
We only have about 10 or 15 seconds left here. Can you auction me out one way or the other? Just give me an auction out real quick.
I guess we can. So we're going to sell a turkey hunt, I guess. So anything else?
Let's do it.
500 to go. Now he'd be 5-5. Now $6 be he'd be 6 to be 6 to go. 6 to be in a 6 to buy. He'd be 6 to 700 to go. 7 to be in a sold. $600 to Paul Gallo.
Chip, thank you, man. Appreciate it. It has been a pleasure and a privilege, sir. Take care. Thank you so very much.
Hey, thank you, Mr.
News
Paul.
coming
I
up
enjoyed
next.
it.